Hello and welcome to another Blender bite-sized video. Now this one I'm going to be showing you how to create this burger meat material in Blender 4. I'll be using Blender 4.2, Windows 11, NVIDIA graphics card, Cycles render engine and of course a custom startup file, which I will show you where to find that video later. Just before I continue with the tutorial, let me remind you that you can grab this material and hundreds more on my Gumroad store, blenderbitesize.gumroad.com. Okay, so here's my custom startup file. It's the same room as I've shown how to create in my previous video. I've just got some slightly different lighting. I've obviously got my burger patties, which are nothing more than a cylinder with a grid fill face, and also some spheres representing meatballs. We're going over to the shading tab. We're enabling a display render preview, and I'm going to assign a new material to one of those burger patties. And then I'm going to change the index of refraction to 1.45. Set the specular to GGX. And put that at 0.025. For the coat, I'm going to change the weight to 0.1. And I'll give the tint a slight pink tone. We'll be controlling some of the other settings there with the node setup that we're about to create. But the first thing I'm going to do is create some displacement. So I'm dragging a connector out of the displacement input on the material output. And then I'm going to set the scale at 0.04. I'll drag a connector out from the height and search for and apply a color ramp using the color output. Then I'll set the position of the white stop to 0.7. Then I'm going to drag out from the color ramp and search for and apply a noise texture. I'll set the scale at -6, detail at 2.5, roughness at 0.667, and the other two as you see here. Then I'm going to connect a texture coordinate and mapping node using the object output. And then before I go any further, I'm going to collapse those two, select them both, and press Ctrl G to make a group. We don't need the group input there, so we can delete that. Then we'll go back out. And then we're going to press N to open the control panel on the right. And we're going to give that node group a name of texture coordinate. And I've done it this way this time to save space. Because every time I need that pair, I can just use this group instead of having two extra massive nodes taking up space. So I can either duplicate that or copy and paste it. I'm then going to select those four nodes at the bottom and press Shift P to apply a frame and give that the name displacement. And you can already see that's actually happening on that burger patty at the top. But what I want to do is link that material to the other objects in the scene. So I will left click, holding down the Shift key onto each object, ending with the patty that's got the material currently assigned to it. I didn't do it the first time, which is why I'm having to do it a second time. Then press Ctrl L followed by M, and that will assign that material to all of those other objects that you've got selected. Okay, next up, this one's a bit complicated. We are going to duplicate that texture coordinate group, drag out a connector, and connect it to a noise texture. The colour output from that is going to go into a bump node into the height socket. That's going to go into the principled shader in the coat connector and the normal connector for the main principled shader, and you can already see that making a difference. We'll set the scale at 5 and everything else we'll leave as it is. Then we're going to apply a frame to those again, remember Shift P, and we'll call that bump. The strength on the bump node I'll set at 0.75. We can always play around with that later if we need to. Again, I'm going to duplicate or copy and paste that texture coordinate group. And I'll connect that up to another noise texture. Then from the color output, I will connect that up to a color ramp. Then I'll duplicate those 3, trying not to drop them in a frame. And then I'll mix those by pressing Ctrl Shift right click and drag a line between the 2 color ramps. Then I'll set that as screen and I'll connect that up to the base color and the roughness of the principled shader and also the roughness of the coat. So that top color ramp needs to go into the factor, then the A socket needs to be a color, fairly dark, and then the bottom color ramp is going to go into the B socket. On the top color ramp, we're going to flip that. And we're going to position the black at 0.675 and the white at around, let's say, 0.375. And you can see how it's now creating that mottled dark patches. Then for the bottom color ramp, we're going to add a stop. We're going to bring the black value in at 0.2 and the white value in at 0.8. And then this is where the color of our meat is going to come from. So I'm going to play around with the color sliders here. Obviously, if you have any hex values you want to enter in, you can just click on that hex button and enter the hex value there. I'm basically just kind of trying to create this from eye. So it might not be super realistic, but it's going to be a close approximation of semi-cooked burger meat, which is probably what you would have on a night out. So I'm actually just copying that into the other 2 slots, which you can do by pressing Control C on with your mouse hovered over the color, switch to the next color stop, and then Control V over that big slot there. And then I'm just basically adjusting the value on those last 2 to try and get somewhere near where I want to be. Now, next up, we've got some math to do. So I'm going to need 4 math nodes. So I'll just enter 1 and then duplicate the rest. Then I'm going to need 2 value nodes to be my starting values. Then the top 3 math nodes need to be set to multiply. And I'm going to connect that top one to the scale of the top noise texture and change the value to 2 on the bottom slot. Same for this one, and this one will connect up to the detail of the top noise texture. Then this bottom one I'm going to set to multiply. Sorry, third one down I'm going to set to multiply. Set the value to 3. Connect that up to the scale of that noise texture at the bottom. The last one is set to subtract, and that's going to have a value at 3 in the bottom slot. And I'm going to connect this up to the scale of the noise texture in the bump group. And I need to do some other connections as well, but I think I might come over here first. Now for this value at the bottom, we're going to call it texture detail. And we're going to set the value at 2.5. And we're going to connect that let me remember this, to the top slot in the subtract math node, to the detail in the noise texture at the bottom that's not in a group, and then there's a third one. I'll stick it in here for now. And then that top value node, we are going to give it a value of 5. We're going to call it texture scale. And we will connect it up to the top slot of the top math node, top slot of the third math node. It's kind of looking like what I remember. Fairly sure there's still something not quite right. We'll also take it down into the top slot of the subtract node. I'm fairly sure that texture detail should have a third connector. Okay, let's keep going. I shall come back to this. Oh, okay, we'll put it in the scale in the bump node. I'm fairly sure it's not supposed to go there because it's detail and it's gone into scale, but never mind. I will come back to it before the end of this video. We will get this right. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. So let's just tidy up for now. I'm going to put a frame around all of that mathy stuff and all those color ramps and noise textures. I just call it color. This looks like a complicated setup to get color, but when you think we're trying to recreate all sorts of different graduations of color, and I'm just isolating things there to see if they're working as I'm expecting, and they kind of are. I think there's something not quite right with that bump. It's looking okay from here. Displacement's looking fine too. Okay. I think with the colours I'm not quite there yet, so I'm just going to have a quick play around with those. Now, believe it or not, at this point my computer started playing up, and when I was adjusting colours it was not playing. It was just solid blacking out everything. So I had to do a couple of quick restarts here, so you might see some chopping about, and I apologise for that. If that ever happens to you, by the way, the really simple low-tech solution that I had was just go up to the file menu, open recent, and open the file that I was currently working on, and it just fixed it. I don't know why, I don't know how, it did. But thankfully I'm working in a stable version of Blender as opposed to an experimental or a beta, so these things are very few and far between. Okay. So we're getting there with this colour. These are the bits I usually chop out or edit out. It's the fiddling around bit. And there we go, that's blacked out the colour again. So with the coat, I'm thinking it's adding way too much gloss, even at that low value. So I'm going to drop it down to 0.01. I know it's kind of pointless because it's rather here nor there, but a little bit of gloss on areas that have got some roughness maybe might help a little bit of realism. They do look quite glossy at the moment. Now the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that on the subtract node there's nothing actually connecting out of that. And that I think is what was throwing me. So here is me fixing that. I had to fix it after I'd done a test render, so you may see this again. Anyway, there we go. I noticed this in the end. That was supposed to go in the scale, and then the detail output from the texture value was supposed to go in the detail. Ugh, good grief. Anyway, over here are my render settings. Feel free to pause the video if you need to note any of these down, or if you're working along with me, then feel free to adjust as you go. And of course I am using the compositor to do a lot of the legwork, so let me show you that. And do remember, to get those three connectors you need to have denoising enabled under the render settings up there, and also denoising data in the view layer. And then we'll send that to render. Now this took around 12 seconds in all, believe it or not, with all those nodes, even with the compositing. So there you go, some beefy burgers and some meaty meatballs. I hope you've enjoyed this one, even with the faffing about. If you have, please remember to give the video a thumbs up, any questions in the usual place, and of course subscribe for future content. In the meantime, thanks for watching.